Hello, everyone. Janine here from the Book Publishing Academy. Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of the Book Publishing Academy podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have Miss Lavetra Sullivan here on the podcast with us. She is an author, an entrepreneur. She's written a couple of books. I'm super excited to have her chat a little more about that. Lavetra, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
I'm Lavetra. I am from South Carolina, Orangeburg, South Carolina, born and raised in King Street, South Carolina. I have two beautiful daughters, Diamond and Emerald. I'm a teacher. I'm an author. I do a little bit of acting. I am currently in the process of producing a stage play from my first book. So yeah, I do a lot.
Look at all of that. I can't wait to dive in with you. Tell the listeners and the viewers a little bit about your journey to becoming an author. What was that light bulb moment for you where you were like, I think I need to write a book?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I always like writing. I think I realized my gift in middle school. You know how they had the standardized test, and I scored well. It wasn't something I was trying to do, but it just came naturally. And so that kind of like made me think, okay. So when I got to high school, I entered journalism, and I did a lot of writing essay contests, oratorical contests, and I won. So I was like, okay. So then I said, well, I'll major in English. And initially, I wanted to be like a news broadcaster, a reporter, but that didn't work out. So I became an English teacher, and I, like to help others read and write. So, as far as the book and what made me say, okay, this is now time, I always wanted to write a book, but I just didn't know what I was supposed to write about. So I was in a prayer meeting, and there was a guy, a minister. He did not know me. He didn't know me from a can of paint. And he took his Bible and he pretty much hit me over the head and said, "What are you waiting on to write that book?" And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did he even notice, And I just knew it was a message from God. I'm like, okay, I need to write this book. So from that point, I started writing. I started looking for my publisher, and I just took off from there. It took me a while to get the first book published, but I was determined that, okay, now it's time.
I love how you took that as a sign from God, because a lot of times God will send lots of signs and sometimes we ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you were like, okay, I need to go ahead and do this. And it
Mm-hmm.
literally was right in your face. He's like, hello,
Yes.
like, when are you gonna
Yeah.
do this
Yeah.
book?
Yeah. Right.
So you have two books right now. You have I'm Free and then Can I Borrow Some Trust? Tell us a
Right.
little bit about those.
Okay. So Can I Borrow Some Trust is my first book. Um, it is about my life during a 14-year marriage. And it speaks to those who may be considering marriage for the first time, second time. I got married at a very young age. So I didn't really like stop and to seek God and say, okay, should I be getting married at this age? Is the person that you have for me? So it speaks to that audience of those who, get married for the wrong reasons. Just get married just because so it also speaks to children of alcoholics, adults that may be alcoholics or have had experience with alcoholism. I was married to an alcoholic, so it offers healing, hope for those who may be going through those situations. So yeah, that's my first book, Can I Borrow Some Trust? And the title came from me going through several instances in my marriage where I just didn't have it all. Things didn't seem to line up financially. So I was always like, okay, God, what am I going to do? How am I going to make ends meet? And God spoke to me and said, instead of worrying about borrowing money or how are you going to do this and that, why don't you borrow some trust? And so that's how I came up with the title, Can I Borrow Some Trust?
I love that. And
Okay.
and
Mhm.
after you wrote that book, how did it feel for you to share your story?
It was it was bittersweet. I was excited. I was scared. There were so many emotions. Excited because I did it. It felt like having a baby. Like I actually did it. But then there was, were the thoughts of what are people gonna think? You're just like putting your whole life story out there. You're transparent. But I knew that it wasn't just for me. It was for other people. It wasn't about the money that I was gonna make. It was about sharing my story and helping others to get there, to know that, if you're in this situation, there is hope. I'm not an advocate for divorce, but I'm an advocate for being healed and whole and knowing that God has better for us if we are in a situation that is not of God. So there were a lot of emotions, but at the end of the day, I knew that I had done what God wanted me to do.
I love that. And then the second book, tell us about that one.
Okay, so the second book is I'm Free. Oh, got to turn it the right
I love
way.
the color.
Okay.
Can you
I'm
put it up a
free.
little? It's a
Okay.
angel wing, or it's a dove.
Mhm. It is a dove and
So
it's
pretty.
cloud. Yes, it's clouds. And that is because I lost my niece in 2018. She was 20 years old and she died from sudden blood clots to the brain. And it was a shock to everybody. She was a very vibrant young lady who just, loved people. Everybody loved her. She went to school and to college, and she was going to major in music education. And when she came home for the summer, I think it was like that weekend, she started complaining about her throat hurting. And that was like that Saturday or Sunday. And that Wednesday, she was supposed to go and take her test for the praxis to, go into the education program, but she didn't make it. She passed on that Wednesday. She went to the ER that Tuesday. And by the time we got her from Orangeburg to Charleston, by the time they transported her, it just didn't look well, and they performed surgery, and there were so many blood clots that they could not get all of the blood clots. But the title I'm Free is because she's free from everything that's here on this earth, all the sickness, disease, pain, anything that she may have been going through, she's free from it.
Wow. That is a very unique book to write for a unique audience as well. But I
Mm-hmm.
can imagine that that one also brought a lot of healing to you and your
Mm-hmm.
family, just sharing a
Right.
little bit of her story and and what transpired through that.
Right.
So where can our listeners and readers pick up these books?
They can find them on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Kingdom Builders Publication, and my Facebook page. I have a Facebook page, a business page entitled Write the Vision. So they can also find the books there.
Love it. And the second book, the I'm Free one, I assume that also helps readers with like just coping with grief, I assume, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have,
Yes.
go ahead.
It's like the elephant in the room. A lot of times we really don't take the time to grieve. We just, kind of brush on and brush it over and go on. My sister and her husband, that Jasmine was their daughter, and they really don't talk about it a lot, and I just think grief is that thing that people just they don't want to deal with it. And so or they don't know how to deal with it maybe. And everybody deals with it in a different way. And for me, writing is one way. So, it offers like scriptures, it gives anecdotes, just it's just not all depressing. It gives stories of things that Jasmine did and to inspire somebody else. So yes, it does offer healing, and just tips on how to get through that process and to
I
let others know that they are not the only ones, that are going through the grieving process.
I love that because there's no manual to grieving.
Mhm.
Like there's no book that tells you
Right.
like, okay, this is what you should do, and everybody goes through it in a different way. I know from my
Mhm.
experience, like I think I had like two deaths in the family back to back, and I just became
Mhm.
numb
Right.
like a ghost.
Mhm.
Like no
Mhm.
emotion, no nothing. But then you can
Exactly.
see it in my personal life, like drinking more or sleeping
Mhm.
more, and you
Mhm.
start to self-sabotage, like
Right.
watching Netflix. Like these are all signs of like someone is grieving, but they just don't know how to speak and say it.
Mhm.
So I love
Exactly.
that you created a book, because it helped you with your grieving, but then it can also help other people as well.
Right. Thank you.
And I love it because you never know. There might be people that reach out to you and are like, can you like coach me? Can you help me? Like
Mhm.
there's so many
Mhm.
more opportunities that can be opened from just writing a book. So,
Right.
and
Right.
are you currently working on any new projects?
I am starting to write the sequel to I'm Free, and it will be entitled I'm Free Too, TOO. I'm free also. And the reason why is because I have gone through a lot in my 50 years. I have overcome some ailments. I wouldn't say, serious illnesses, but they could have been serious, had I not reached out to God and prayed for healing. So there are a lot of things that I've gone through that I want to talk about and share. So I want people to know that we don't have to die to be free. We can be free on this side as well, from miscarriage to allergies, hypertension, prediabetes. And those are just some of the physical ailments, but also free from debt, free from loneliness, so a lot of emotional and social issues as well. So that's my project that I am hoping to work on next. I'm Free to TOO.
I love that. It's like you're creating a series of books. You never know what might come after that too.
Right. Yes.
Love that.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about the publishing process for you. How did
Mhm.
that, how was that experience for you? Like going from writing a book to getting it published? Did you have
Mhm.
any fears as you were going through that process? Like tell us a little
Mhm.
more about that.
I did because, people today are out for money, you know, and uh, in order to have something of quality, you're going to have to spend some money. I'm not saying you have to spend a lot of money, but there's going to be some costs. So my initial search was like, okay, I'm, Googling, I'm looking up numbers of people, and of course there are like these big companies that want, these astronomical prices. And I came across a mom and pop, and I was like, okay, I was really hesitant because I'm like, I just don't know. But when I say they delivered, they delivered. And, with anything, you're going to have some issues along the way. But for the most part, it was just smooth. I gave them my baby and they delivered it. And so the second time around, people were like, are you going to self-publish? I'm like, nope. I trust them. I'm going to just, pay the money, and I'm going to do it. And they did. And so I've considered self-publishing. I'm an English teacher, but I'm a stickler about, okay, this needs to be right. I want somebody to read it, and make sure that all I's are dotted, all T's are crossed. So that, for me, that's what worked best, so that I wouldn't miss anything. And even on the second book, I did miss something. So
Mhm.
I'm glad that, I had somebody else to read it and look at it and say, okay, is this correct? So yeah, but it was kind of, I was kind of nervous. But once I was able to see that they were reputable, they operated, in integrity, I was good. I was like, okay, I can do this, and I'll do it again and again.
I
Yeah.
love it. And I think for many authors, we all have that fear of, will my book come out how I want it to? Do I
Mhm.
trust this editor, or this publisher, or just even the graphic designer to create
Mhm.
the vision that I
Mhm.
want? Um, there's a lot of fears that come into play, but I think
Mhm.
it's so courageous that we do it anyways, despite
Right.
what people think, what people say, despite our own self-limiting beliefs that we have for
Mhm.
ourselves, right? Um,
Right.
it's a beautiful process to go through, even though sometimes it can get frustrating. But when you
Right.
see your book in your hand, it's a crazy, crazy
Mhm.
interesting feeling of
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I created this. And the
Mhm.
legacy that we're creating after, like, once we're not here anymore, imagine how many more people are going to still read our books, and our
Right.
kids and their kids, and nieces and nephews, and
Mhm.
it's pretty amazing to know
Right.
we're leaving a stamp in this world somehow, some way.
Right.
What would you say to any listeners or viewers that are contemplating, maybe they might want to publish a book, but they have that fear of like, what is somebody going to say, or is my book good enough, or is it going to be done correctly? What would you say to that person that has that fear?
I would say do it afraid.
Mm.
Start somewhere and just, start small. Start with something, even if it's just like an essay, start with something small, get out there, get among other writers, have somebody read, in your inner circle and say, okay, how does this sound? Do you think this is something that is worth publishing? And be open to their honest opinion. If they say, okay, it sucks, you have to be willing to say, okay, well, how can I make this better? But, don't just give up. You have to keep trying. And so, anybody who, is thinking about writing, thinking about getting published, I say just go for it.
Just do it.
Hmm.
I'm very big on that too, of like, feel the fear, because you're going to
Hmm.
feel it, but do it anyways.
And
You'll scream
also
your way through it.
yeah, what you'll realize is that what you are afraid of, other people are really not they're looking at you like, man, you're awesome. You're like a hero, even though you don't want to feel that pressure. But the way that you think that they're looking at you is probably not even the way that they're looking at you. They're looking at you like, you actually wrote a book. You told your story. Man, I wish I could do that. That's something I've been wanting to do for the longest. So, you have to be able to say, I'm not worried about what other people are going to say. I'm worried about what God is telling me to do. If he tells me to put my story out there, I'll be the martyr.
I love that. And it's
Hmm.
true what you said, because a lot of times we even think like, will anybody even buy it? Like, do they, and then when you do have the book in your hand, people are like, oh my God, they get so excited. And you're
Hmm.
just like, oh, thanks. I
Hmm.
didn't know that someone could feel that way about me and what I'm creating.
Hmm.
So it goes back to like, a lot of times it's our own just belief systems about what we're,
Right.
but everyone else thinks we're just amazing. They're like, oh my God, you have a book.
Right.
Um, well, Lavitra, I want to thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. I think that our listeners and our viewers should definitely pick up your books if they are in a space where they want to learn more about premarital like conditioning, and just the things
Hmm.
that they need to do to prepare in order to get married, making sure that God is in the center. And then for anyone that has
Hmm.
ever gone through grief, I think your second book would be amazing for that type of audience. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. I will make sure that we link your books to the podcast so that we can make sure that we support you. Any last minute words that you might have for everyone?
I just thank you for giving me this opportunity and helping me to get my books out there. I really appreciate it. Thank
Of
you.
course. Thank you so much. And guys, if you are tuned in, make sure that you like and subscribe and you share with your friends. And we will see you on the next episode of the Book Publishing Academy podcast. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.